My earliest memories include gloomy blue photos. Before I turned 5. Dad appears in a faded photograph hidden in a dusty album. Mother Anna arrived as a storm loomed over our small flat. She'd moan about starting over as she hurriedly scrubbed the kitchen floor. One moment she would throw me into a jaw-dropping hug, her grip so tight I couldn't breathe. Whereas these suffocating embraces were the only signs of affection I desired, I was mostly just a shadow following her around. She'd dart around the flat, a worried expression on her face that appeared to have its own personality. Sometimes, when her brow furrowed and her worry lines deepened, she would leave me downstairs with Mrs. Rodriguez. The tension in the air would crackle, much like static electricity. When Mom returned with a disinterested sigh, she would tousle my hair in a way that appeared more like a chore than a loving gesture. Then, a glimmer of a grin would appear on her face, a taste of the warmth I so desperately desired. Mom would get back into the dating scene. We met her. A man's eyes wrinkled at the corners as he chuckled. His movements were soft and quiet, in contrast to Mom's frenzy in our stressful home. His generosity towards me seemed out of place. I remember lying on the couch, clinging to him, tears streaming down my cheeks, after a particularly embarrassing incident at school with Jessica Miller and her encouragement. "Why do they always pick on me?" I muttered into his shirt, my chest tightening with the familiar ache of loneliness. He bowed before me, his eyes filled with worry that I rarely saw in adults. He wiped away a tear and murmured softly, "They pick on you because they feel insecure. They try to undermine others in order to feel powerful." His words were like a balm for my wounded soul. Something inside of me flickered with hope at that exact moment. Perhaps, just possibly, things were starting to improve. However, hope in my environment was brittle and easily broken, much like a butterfly. Then came Lily, a tiny bundle of joy with eyes that mirrored her mother's. She arrived 1 year later. Suddenly, I was no longer the center of attention. All of the warmth and affection seemed to vanish, replaced by a cold indifference. Mom's attention had shifted entirely to Lily, leaving me to navigate the perplexing world of childhood alone. Awkward braces, a permanent frizzy halo around my head, and a Texas-sized knot of insecurity tightened in my gut. It was also the age when my mother's hostility toward me grew into a full-fledged weed garden. Have a picture day at school. Mom took the day off work to fuss over Lily's pigtails and find the ideal sparkly dress. When it was my turn, a skater lifts as she searches through my closet. She muttered, "Nothing decent in here." Of course, when picture day arrived, Lily looked like a little princess, while I resembled a rumpled dandelion in contrast to her sunflower. Mom gushed over Lily's photo, while mine received a quick glance and a dismissive grunt. A less kind heart tried to be a positive influence in my life. He'd take me shopping and sometimes help me choose clothes that fit and flatter me. One day, after a particularly difficult day with Mom, I found myself clinging to him, my need for comfort overwhelming Dad. The word came out before I could stop it. He froze. Then a painful expression appeared on his face. Mom appeared at the doorway, her eyes blazing. "You have one, Father," Elena hissed, her voice venomous, "and believe me, he deserves you." Her words felt like a slap. Alak noticed the tension and ruffled my hair awkwardly. "Look, it's fine," he muttered. "It isn't okay." I choked and tears welled up in my eyes. Lily, who had been watching the scene unfold with a smug expression, suddenly spoke up. "Elena has been bad again, Daddy. She took my candy without asking." At 16, I experienced my first crushes, awkward dances, and a constant knot of nerves in my stomach. Dating was a minefield at my house. Mom had a knack for sabotaging any potential romance before it took off. Take Mark, for example. Tall, funny, and sporting a smile that could melt glaciers. He was everything a teenage girl could hope for. After weeks of nervous texts and stolen glances, I finally got the courage to ask him out. He said, "Yes." Excitement bubbled in my chest, but it was quickly replaced by dread at the prospect of him meeting Mom. Mom went into overdrive on our date night. She fussed over Lily's bedtime story, making it seem like it would never end. When Mark arrived, nervous but sweet, Mom greeted him with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Elena never cleans her room," she casually stated, as if discussing the weather. "You might find socks and pizza boxes beneath that mountain of clothes." My cheeks burn as if they were on fire. Mark gave a nervous chuckle, but the awkward silence lasted like a bad joke. The remainder of the evening was a disaster. Mom kept making snide remarks about my weight, musical preferences, and even my college choice. By the end of the night, Mark had practically run out the door, leaving me feeling deflated. The story then repeated itself with a few more unfortunate characters. Every time I brought someone home, Mom would become a master of backhanded compliments and subtle digs. My self-esteem plummeted, and any potential relationship dissolved faster than a wet firecracker. College applications begin at the age of 18. Nervous goodbyes and a fierce determination to escape my childhood's suffocating grip. Senior year became my mission control. It was a deliberate strategy to immerse myself in a world free of my mother's negativity. College applications became my weapon of choice. I spent hours hunched over the kitchen table, pouring out my heart and dreams onto those pristine white pages. Every acceptance letter was a victory, a sliver of hope chipping away at the wall Mom had built around me. Of course, she didn't make things easy. I announced my acceptance to a university across the state. Her reaction was a perfect example of passive aggression. Elena sighed and shook her head so far away. How will we ever see each other? It was a guilt-inducing question, but I wasn't buying it anymore. We can video chat, Mom, I said calmly. Aside from that, there are airplanes. Alex, my ever-supportive anchor, was ecstatic for me. This is incredible, Elena, he exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. I'm really proud of you. His words were a warm embrace on a cold day. He wasn't my biological father, but he felt more like one than the man who abandoned us so long ago. College was an eye-opener because I was surrounded by people who had no idea about my family history. I finally felt able to breathe. I thrived in a sea of new experiences, pushing myself academically and forming genuine and supportive friendships. At 27, I was in the land of adulthood, with spreadsheets that never seemed to land, and a tiny apartment that felt like a palace in comparison to my cramped childhood bedroom. Life was generally good. My job as an economist kept my mind active, and David, my amazing boyfriend of the past few years, brought warmth and laughter into my life that I hadn't experienced before. One evening, we ate takeout Thai and drank a bottle of wine. David dropped a bombshell. Suki said, looking at me with that goofy grin I loved. I believe it is time we met each other's parents. My stomach lurched. Meeting David's family was simple. A breeze. They lived in a cozy house with a backyard that smelled of freshly cut grass. They welcomed me with open arms. His mother, Sarah, practically smothered me with hugs, and his father, Michael, spent the entire evening telling jokes that made me snort into my napkin. They were friendly, funny, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. It felt normal. In the past, I would never have associated this word with family dinners, but the thought of David meeting my, interesting family filled me with dread. How could I explain the years of emotional neglect, the relentless jabs, and the suffocating negativity? I told him everything, the fights, the tears, and the way Mom had harmed my self-esteem over the years. Unsurprisingly, Lily's condition had not improved, now a master manipulator who knew exactly how to press my buttons. David listened patiently, his hand softly resting on mine. Elena, he declared firmly, I am marrying you, not for your family. They may be baggage, but you are the prize. His words were a balm for my soul, a declaration of love that erased years of doubt. Maybe, just maybe, I can finally start a happy family of my own, one full of affection, acceptance, and laughter. The type of family I never had but always deserved. My stomach twisted like a pretzel as I dialed Alex's number. This was it. D-Day for breaking the news about David and his engagement. Hello, Elena. What up? Alex's familiar voice boomed over the phone. Hello, Alex, I said, taking a deep breath. There is something I need to tell you. I began the story, spilling details about David, the proposal, and the upcoming wedding. There was a pleasant silence on the other end of the line. A genuine laugh erupted. Elena, that is fantastic. I'm very happy for you both. His words swept over me like a warm wave, reducing some of the anxiety. Listen, he continued. You have got to invite him over for dinner. Allow me to meet the man who finally snagged you. David's supportive heart was all for it. So, a few weeks later, we pulled up to my childhood home, which still evoked a strange mix of nostalgia and dread. Mom answered the door. Her face broke into a surprised smile. "Elena, have you come to visit? And who is this handsome guy?" "Mom, this is David, my fiancé," I said with a tight smile. David stepped forward and extended a hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Turner." Mom smiled, shaking his hand a little too enthusiastically. "The pleasure is all mine, dear. So what do you do for a living, David?" David, unaware of the undercurrent of Mom's question, launched into a detailed explanation of his work as a director at a large corporation. Alex, ever the smooth operator, interjected with jokes and stories to keep the conversation flowing. Lily, of course, was not going to be outdone. She spent the entire meal batting her eyelashes at David, interrupting our conversation to ask him about his job and hobbies. Mom, ever the doting mother, gushed over Lily's every word, in stark contrast to the thinly veiled barbs she kept hurling at me. "Elena, honey," she'd say, her voice brimming with phony sweetness, "you should really take Lily's fashion tips. That dress you are wearing. Well, it's not very flattering." David, thankfully, seemed unconcerned about the digs, but I knew exactly what Mom was doing. She was suddenly putting me down and making me feel insecure in front of my fiancé. The entire dinner felt like a twisted performance, with constant reminders of how I wasn't good enough, pretty enough, or successful enough. By the time dessert came around, I was ready to run and scream as soon as it was polite. We made our excuses and left as soon as we were safely buckled in the car. David gave a long sigh. "Your mom? Is she a character?" He spoke with a hint of amusement in his voice. "Yeah," I muttered, a wave of exhaustion rushing over me. "She is capable." He gently squeezed my hand. "But hey, we got through dinner." He was correct. We did, even with Mom's negativity lingering in the air like a bad odor. The simple act of holding David's hand gave me a sense of strength and purpose. This was my future. I was building a future with him, not with my dysfunctional family. The warm glow of post-dinner satisfaction lingered in the air as David and I curled up on the couch, thumbing through wedding magazines. We envisioned a small, intimate ceremony in a beautiful vineyard, surrounded by those who love and support us. It was perfect. The next morning, the dream shattered into a million pieces. My phone vibrated with David's name. His usual cheerful ringtone had been replaced by a ringing that sent chills down my spine. "Elena," he said, his voice strained with anger and disbelief. "We have a problem." My stomach lurched. "What is wrong?" I asked. He took a deep breath. "Your mom?" My face was drained of blood. What did she do this time? David explained his words, which hit me like punches. Mom, the ever-reliable manipulator, had somehow gotten his work phone number, rather than a congratulatory call. She'd launched a verbal tirade that would make a sailor blush. Apparently, in her twisted world, I was the epitome of inadequacy. Ugly, dull, and lacking in social graces. It did not stop there. She even dragged Dad into it, using his abandonment years ago as a weapon. But as the pièce de résistance, she suggested David abandoned me in favor of Lily, claiming my younger sister was the epitome of beauty and intelligence. Fury boiled up within me, a hot, venomous rage. How dare she try to ruin my happiness yet again? David, bless his heart, was also furious, but he turned his rage into something unexpected, a crazy, audacious plan that was equally risky and exciting. "We expose her," he said, clenching his jaw. "We set a trap." The plan was audaciously simple. David would call back, pretend to be persuaded by her words, and set up a meeting to discuss this absurd proposal. His goal was to capture the entire conversation on his phone. David placed the call. His voice is smooth and convincing. Mom is completely oblivious to the internet. She was about to walk in and quickly agreed to meet him for coffee. A nervous laugh erupted from my chest. This was it. The takedown of Momzilla went ahead. The outcome was uncertain, but one fact was certain. I was not going to allow my mother to dictate my future any longer. This time, the tables had turned, and I was prepared to play for fun. I chose to attend their meeting. The thought of confronting Mom, especially disguised as a stranger, sent shivers down my back. But the resentment I felt for her constant negativity and attempt to sabotage my happiness was a powerful motivator. Back in my comfortable jeans and worn-out t-shirt, I sat in a corner booth at a bustling cafe across the street from our designated meeting spot. Thick black glasses perched on my nose completed the disguise, transforming me into an anonymous observer. As I watched Mom enter the cafe, butterflies danced a frenetic jig in my stomach. She wore a triumphant smile on her face. She saw David at the prearranged table in a private room. Her smile widened even further. This was it. Operation Mozilla Takedown was officially underway. David, bless his tech-savvy heart, had discreetly turned on his phone's dictaphone. Me? I overheard their entire conversation in the immediate area. Their conversation began innocently enough, with David playing the role of the interested suitor, before Mom, completely ignoring his phone, launched into her diatribe. You see, David, she started leaning in conspiratorially. Eleanor, in my opinion, isn't suitable for marriage. My blood became cold. The woman who was supposed to be my mother, who was supposed to love and support me, was disparaging me to a total stranger. Mom continued, her voice laced with fake sympathy. Not very attractive either, if you know what I mean. David, to his credit, kept his face expressionless, simply nodding and murmuring non-committal phrases inside. I knew he must be furious. But Lily, Mom's voice fell to a conspiratorial whisper. That's a girl with potential, smart and beautiful. She understands how to navigate social situations. The audacity of it all. Lily, with her airhead personality and complete lack of work ethic, was apparently the epitome of elegance and intelligence, according to Mom. The conversation continued, a masterclass in manipulation and deceit. Blinded by her own delusions, Mom even confessed to never loving my stepfather, claiming she'd only married him for his money. The woman had no shame. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mom stood up, her face radiating self-satisfaction. Well, David, it was lovely meeting you. Think about what I said. She heard, patting his hand with a perfectly manicured nail as she walked out of the cafe. I could only shake my head in disbelief. So what now? I asked, my voice tied. David pulled me into a hug. His touch a source of comfort amidst the swirling storm of emotions. Now, he said, his voice firm, we expose her. The air crackled with tension as I walked into my childhood home that weekend. Mom's smile was a mile wide, radiating a smugness that set my teeth on edge. Alana, honey, you will believe it, she gushed, the words tumbling out before I even had a chance to say hello. What quote-s that, Mom? I asked, already bracing myself for a bombshell. David, she declared, her voice dripping with sickening satisfaction. Decided to see reason he's leaving you and marrying Lily. My heart did a little stutter, but I forced a smile. That's great, Mom. Really happy for them. My stepdad, bless his perpetually confused soul, cleared his throat. But I thought they were getting married. Lily, who had been lounging on the couch like a pampered cat, snorted a laugh. Apparently not. Dad, Eleanor just wasn't good enough for him. Shocker. I ignored her snide remark, my eyes locked on Mom's triumphant face. It was showtime. Actually, Mom, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. David's right here. Just then, David walked in, a silly grin plastered on his face. His presence sent a collective gasp echoing through the room. Hi, everyone, he said, his voice smiling. Just in time for a little family fun? He pulled out his phone and pressed play. The room fell silent as Mom's voice, dripping with malice, filled the air. The conversation from the cafe played in its entirety her diatribe about me. Her praise for Lily, the shocking confession about my stepfather, the color drained from Mom's face with each passing sentence. Stepdad turned a shade of pale, his jaw slack with disbelief. As for Lily, her bravado crumbled, replaced by a terrified whimper. When the recording ended, a deathly silence descended upon the room. Then my stepfather exploded. You lying snake, he roared, his voice shaking with fury. You married me for money all these years. Mom, for the first time in my life, looked genuinely lost. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they were overshadowed by the storm brewing in my stepfather's face. I want a divorce, he declared, his voice thick with anger. Get a lawyer. The room imploded. Mom and Lily burst into tears. There were wails, a cacophony of misery and self-pity. David, bless his heart, looked as comfortable as a fish out of water, caught in a hurricane. Amidst the chaos, I felt a strange sense of calm. The truth, ugly and raw, was finally out in the open. The years of unspoken hurt, the manipulation, the lies, it all spilled out, shattering the facade of our dysfunctional family. The following weeks were a blur of tears, choke sobs from my stepdad, and icy stares from Lily whenever our paths crossed at the grocery store. Mom, the architect of this whole mess, retreated into a self-imposed social media blackout. As for me, I felt strangely hollow. The anger that had fueled me for so long was gone, leaving a gaping hole that needed filling. One sunny afternoon, David found me curled up on the couch, mindlessly flipping through wedding magazines that now seemed like dusty relics from a bygone era. "Hey," he said, his voice laced with concern. "You all right?" I managed a weak smile. "Yeah, just thinking. Everything just feels so different." He squeezed onto the couch beside me, pulling me into a hard. "It is," he admitted. "But hey, different can be good. A chance to start fresh, you know." His words provided a gentle nudge in the right direction. Maybe he was correct. Perhaps the mother-shaped void in my life can be filled with something new, something exciting. A spark ignited in my chest. So I said with a mischievous glint in my eye, "What say we try something crazy?" David's eyebrows rose. "Crazy? Like what? How about taking a road trip?" I suggested. A grin spread across my face. It, quote, "S just us, a map and open road. There are no expectations, no timelines, just pure adventure." "You took me on a road trip," he declared. And so our plans for this sharp turn. The meticulously planned vineyard ceremony turned into a spontaneous cross-country adventure. We packed a beat-up camper van with essentials, copious snacks, a killer playlist, and a well-worn copy of On the Road, and set out with no destination in mind, only the prospect of new experiences and shared memories. After a year, David and I were standing at the altar, exchanging vows beneath a canopy of fragrant flowers. It wasn't the elaborate ceremony I had envisioned, but it was ideal. My recently divorced and distant from Lily's stepfather, rather than my disapproving mother, escorted me down the aisle. His eyes were filled with both regretful and proud tears. He whispered, "You know, kiddo, I always knew you'd find your happily ever after." He gripped my hand. Following the wedding, things settled into a comfortable routine. David and I created a love-filled life together. Laughing at the odd, exciting road trip, my stepfather began to come around more frequently, telling us about his adventures and making not-so-subtle suggestions that he wanted to be a grandfather.